Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to all the people online, and welcome to everybody who came here in person. It's really nice to see so many of you. As usual, we will start with the Namo Tassa. Please feel free to join me if you like. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Bodang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So our talk today is about the joy of renunciation. Before we start the talk, we will do half an hour of meditation as usual. The meditation today will be a little bit different than usual. So the Buddha actually recommended for his disciples, for the monastic disciples, but also for the lay people to reflect on the behavior of the arahants once a week, or if you can't do it once a week, then at least once every 2 weeks on the moon days, on the full moon day and on the dark moon day, and to reflect how the arahants behave, and then to spend one day where we follow the practices of the arahants. So where we pretend that we are arahants, and by practicing in that way, the defilements in our mind will slowly be reduced. So basically we fake it till we make it. So we pretend that we are arahants, and so slowly over time we lessen our defilements until finally we actually do become arahants by practicing in this way. So today in our meditation, I will guide you through a process where we explore a little bit how the arahants live, and where you imagine that you live in that way. And I want you to just explore what is coming up, what kind of emotions are coming up, what kind of thoughts are coming up when we describe those kind of practices. We're going to pretend that you're all going forth, that we are all becoming monastics today. So what kind of emotions are coming up? And anything is okay, whether you feel scared or whether you feel excited or whether you think that's absolutely terrible. Anything is okay. Just explore what your mind, how your mind reacts to this kind of practice. So please sit in a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Make sure that you find a position where you don't have to wobble around too much. Try to keep your body upright so you don't get sleepy. And just focus your attention on your breathing. Withdraw your attention from the outside world. Go inside your body. Just focus on the breath. So you have come to the monastery. Today is the day when you have decided you're going to ordain. You're going to spend the rest of your life as a monastic, as a monk or a nun. You quit your job. You left your house or your apartment. You said goodbye to your friends. You said goodbye to your family. One of your friends has dropped you off here, taken your car, taken your wallet, and you're at the monastery now. Just see what kind of thoughts are coming up, what kind of feelings are coming up. Are you excited about the idea? Or are you a little bit nervous? Or maybe do you think this is the worst idea of your life? Think about what it feels like to leave everything behind, especially to leave your family and friends behind. So you're at the monastery. Monastic is there. They greet you warmly. They lead you inside. And they tell you that now is the time for your head shaving ceremony. So they're going to shave off all your hair. Think about what that means for you. You no longer have the ability to express your personality in the way you style your hair, you dye your hair, you cut your hair. Do you feel you're losing something? Or maybe do you think this is a very liberating way of living? You no longer have to worry what your hair looks like. You no longer have a bad hair day. You're not going to need to buy shampoo anymore. Is it difficult for you to let go of your hair? Or is that something that would be easy for you? Now the monastic also tells you that you are going to remove your lay clothes and put on some white robes. So these white robes are just rectangular pieces of cloth, quite similar to the robes that the monastics wear. So they're not tailored. You can just imagine them like a bed sheet or a tablecloth. And this is what you're going to wear. These kind of clothes is what you're going to wear for the rest of your life. You're going to look like everyone else in the monastery. Just explore what kind of thoughts and emotions are coming up. Are you losing a way of expressing your personality? Is it difficult for you to imagine that you can no longer choose your own styles, your own fabric? Or do you think it would be liberating, no longer having to think about what to wear, no longer having to worry about fashion, no longer having to worry about what other people think? Then the monastic gives you a metal bowl, and they are telling you that from now on, for the rest of your life, you're going to take all your meals from this one bowl. Everything goes in there together. You're no longer going to have any kind of side dishes or small bowls. All your meals are taken from this one bowl. If you are in a strict monastery, that might mean even soup, even ice cream. Everything goes together into one bowl. How would you feel about that? Do you think it would take away the joy of eating? Do you think you would miss something, miss out on something? Or do you think that would make eating very easy, very simple? Not many dishes to wash? Then the monastic sits down with you and tells you that from now on, for the rest of your life, you're going to keep certain rules, some basic rules of monastic life. The first rule you're going to keep is not to kill or not to harm any living being, but to be compassionate, to care for any being that you encounter in your world. So that doesn't only refer to humans, also refers to all the animals that we share this planet with, even a bedbug, even an ant, even a mosquito, even a cockroach. You're not going to harm them, you want to protect them, you want to care for them. The second rule that you're going to keep, you're not going to steal, and you're not going to take anything that is not given. Anything that might be lying around, anything where you're not sure if it has an owner, anything that might be useful to you, but it hasn't been given to you. You're not going to use that. You're going to practice contentment with very few material possessions. The third rule you're going to keep, you're not going to be sexually active in any way for the rest of your life. Not with any kind of partner, of any kind of gender, not with any other kind of being, also not with yourself alone. You're just going to abstain from any kind of sexual action for the rest of your life. You're also going to practice right speech. Of course, you're not going to tell any lie, but you're also going to abstain from harsh speech. You're going to speak in gentle ways. You're not going to speak divisively. You're not trying to make people quarrel. If people quarrel, you will try to promote harmony between them, to resolve all the conflicts that may arise. And especially, you're going to abstain from idle chatter. You're either going to talk on Dhamma or on things that are important. Or if there's nothing to say, you're just going to keep quiet. Just observe what kind of thoughts, what kind of feelings are coming up. You're also going to abstain from alcohol, from beer, from wine, from any kind of liquor, from any kind of intoxicants, recreational drugs, any kind of substance use. You're going to cultivate a pure mind, a clear mind. The next rule that the monastic tells you about, that you're going to keep for the rest of your life, is to eat only during the morning period of the day, so between dawn and noontime. And you're going to eat only in this period, only from your bowl, and you're not going to choose what you eat. You're just going to eat what people bring to the monastery. You're not going to prepare your own meals. Just observe what's coming up for you. See if you think that would be difficult or easy. You're also going to abstain from any kind of worldly entertainment. You're not going to watch movies anymore. You're not going to listen to music anymore. In fact, when you came to the monastery, you deleted all your files, your music files, your Spotify account, your Netflix account. And you're also not going to sing or dance anymore yourself. The monastic also tells you that from now on, you're not going to use any more makeup, any more jewelry, any more bodily adornments or decorations, anything that's flashy. So you have no more way of attracting attention of other people. Another way that you no longer have to express your personality. You're just going to blend in with anyone else, with everyone else. You're just going to look like anyone else at the monastery. From now on, you're also no longer going to use high or large beds. You're going to sleep on a mattress on the floor, or if you're in a strict monastery, you might even sleep on a mat on the floor. And the last rule that the monastic is telling you about is that you're going to give up the use of money in all its forms. The use of cash, the use of checks, the use of credit cards, of PayPal, any kind of personal funds that you might have, you have to give up now. That means that if you want something, or even if you need something, you have no way of actually getting that yourself. If someone else donates it to you, you will have it. If nobody donates it, you have to make do without. Imagine what that would feel like for you. So now, after the monastic has explained the basic rules for the monastic training and has welcomed you to the community, they take you to your room so you can rest a little. And you see your room, and in that room, it's a very plain room, very simple room. There are no decorations on the walls. There's a mattress on the floor. There's a mat for doing sitting meditation. There's a table, maybe a desk, and a chair. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing else in your room. So they leave you alone there, and you sit down in the silence, in the quiet space, And you realize now you're a monastic. You've made a commitment for the rest of your life to live in this way. Just think about what that would feel like. What kind of thoughts are coming up, emotions? Do you feel happy? Do you feel scared? Do you think that's a really stupid idea? So you sit in that quiet space and then you focus your attention again on your breathing. We're coming to the end of the meditation now. So just focus on your breathing for a little while. Let the image drop away. Just come back to the present moment. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, welcome back, everyone. I assume some people will be relieved to see that they have not really become monastics, and maybe some other people will be disappointed. Today, we are talking about the joy of renunciation. I don't know if you were able to experience any joy or if you just were feeling horrified. So after the talk, we'll have a question session, and I'd be very interested also to hear what was coming up for you, how you were feeling throughout the meditation. But for now, I'll give a little talk. I see some familiar faces. So some people were here a few weeks ago when I was giving another talk. Last time I was talking about metta meditation, because metta meditation is a very powerful practice to counter tendencies in our mind that are hateful or aversive. So we have two basic tendencies or defilements in our mind. The ones are the negative ones, the aversive ones, the hateful ones. And so last time I talked about those. And today I will talk about the opposite ones, the greedy ones, the attachment ones, when we are going towards an object instead of turning away from an object. So the antidote to those greedy tendencies in the mind are basically, I've divided them for today. I've divided them into three different ones. One is giving, one is practice of contentment, and one is renunciation. So giving is usually the easiest one to practice. Giving is an antidote to greed, because when we are greedy or when we are attached to an object, we want to cling on to that object. We don't want to give that object away. So by giving, we practice the opposite of greed, the opposite tendency in our mind to greed. So we practice letting go, we practice sharing with others. And giving is often misperceived as a very easy, simple practice that you can let go of once you get into the deeper states of meditation. So some people think they're very serious meditators, so they don't need to practice giving anymore, because that's only for the stupid beginners. But actually, giving is very, very fundamental to the path. So if you're not able to give to others, if you're not able to even let go of material things, there's absolutely no chance that in your meditation you would be able to let go of any mental states, of any defilements in your mind, because defilements in your mind are so much more subtle than material things. So if you haven't practiced with material things first, there's no way your mind would be strong enough, the habits of letting go would be strong enough to actually be able to let go of the defilements, to let go of the emotional baggage that is there. And then once your mind is strong enough to deal with the superficial defilements in the mind, the emotional baggage that we all struggle with, then only we can progress to the very deep stages of meditation, where we deal with the very deep rooted tendencies, our ego clinging, our self-views, and so on. So only at that point can we actually have any hope of attaining the deeper stages of the path, of the Buddhist path. But giving is a very fundamental practice, not something that we can let go of. Even stream enterers, even once returners, even non-returners cannot let go of the practice of giving. Even to them, that practice of giving is still very important. So giving is one of the antidotes to greed and attachment in our mind. The second antidote that I want to talk about today is contentment. So contentment is one of the opposites of greed. When we are greedy, when we are attached, we cling onto something and we want to have more of that. So we see a new object and then we want to have it, or we remember a pleasant experience in the past and we want to have that again. So when we practice contentment, then we are not running after that object. We realize that actually we have enough in this moment. We are enough, we have enough. We don't need more input from the outside. Don't need more objects. We don't need more experiences. We don't need to run after all those triggers that come at us from the outside. And very often, for example, we watch an ad, maybe on YouTube or something, and they show us an object, and like 5 seconds ago, we didn't even know that that object exists. But once we've seen it, we want to have it. So constantly from the outside, there are triggers coming at us and creating more and more greed in our mind. So those greedy tendencies in our mind, they multiply all by themselves. But contentment is something that we actually actively have to practice in order to counter those tendencies that multiply all by themselves. So contentment, again, is a training. It's not something that we achieve all at once. This is a training that we can train for our whole lives. So not to want whatever just randomly pops up in our mind. Just to, be content, remain in the stillness of that present moment. And then that will weaken the mental habits that cause all this trouble and all this agitation in our mind. And the third practice, the one that I'm actually supposed to talk about tonight, and which we'll go into a little bit more detail, is renunciation. Renunciation often is seen as the trickiest part, or the trickiest of those three: giving, contentment, and renunciation. It's often seen as the most challenging, the most unpopular. Often it's thought that only monastics should practice renunciation. Lay people don't need to practice that. So today I want to talk about the actual joy that comes from renunciation, the the benefits that we get from renunciation. And the Buddha himself, he clearly didn't think that it was only for monastics. He recommended it for lay people, both lay people and monastics. And there are many suttas that describe that. One sutta that I want to talk about today is in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of Eights. The Anguttara Nikaya is a book that collects discourses of the Buddha. And this is sutta number 41. And in that sutta, the Buddha tells his disciples that they should regularly reflect. Arahants behave in a certain way. And now for today, for a whole day and a whole night, I will practice in exactly the same way as the Arahants practice. So I will keep the rules that they keep. I will do the practices that they do. And in that way, I will become a little bit closer to my own goal of becoming an Arahant. And I will live very comfortably and at ease, because Arahants have overcome all suffering, so they don't suffer. They have a very peaceful, joyful, blissful mind. So in that sutta, the Buddha goes through 8 practices, and we have done those 8 practices in our meditation just now. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the Buddha recommends that we follow 8 rules when we try to emulate and to imitate the Arahants. And the first one is, of course, not stealing, not harming other beings. The second one, so not killing, not harming other beings. The second one is not stealing, not taking what is not given. The third one is no sexual intercourse. The fourth one is practicing right speech, not to lie, not to speak harshly, divisively, not to gossip. And if we have nothing important to say, then just remain in silence. And if we practice external silence with our voice, then also our mind can calm down. If we chatter a lot, if we talk a lot in our daily life, we put a lot of inner chat. We arouse a lot of inner chatter also in our mind. So the more we speak with our voice, the more internally we will be agitated. So if there's nothing important to say, then the Buddha recommends we just keep quiet. The fifth one is about not taking alcohol or intoxicants. This is, of course, also a practice that Arahants keep. The sixth one is about not eating in the afternoon or at nighttime. So eating only once or twice a day in the morning. That, of course, frees up a lot of time for your meditation practice. You don't have to cook, you don't have to go shopping, you don't have to wash dishes. And your mind is really completely free to detach from worldly concerns in the afternoon, in the evening, at nighttime, and to just focus on your practice, to focus on your mindfulness. And your body feels quite light. If you don't eat that much, your body starts to feel a lot lighter. It doesn't feel so full, so stuffy, so tired. So a lot of energy can come from this intermittent fasting. And the mind can become very clear and very pure and also very powerful. And the seventh rule that the Buddha suggests to do is not to watch any entertainments, not to listen to music, also not to engage in any bodily adornments or any makeup and things like that. So again, this is something we don't look for external input, because the more external input we get, especially from random entertainments or music, the more agitated our mind gets, the less it becomes calm and peaceful, the less it seems like an arahant's mind. So this is, again, a rule that's important to practice if you want to practice like an arahant. And the last one the last one the Buddha recommends here in this sutta is to sleep on low beds. Again, if you have a very, very comfortable bed, that will be very difficult to resist from just lying down there and being lazy and sleeping or maybe just daydreaming there. So it's not very conducive for the practice of wakefulness and having the energy to actually sit down and do your meditation. It just inclines your mind to be very dull and very lazy. And the last practice we have done in our meditation, but it's not actually mentioned in the sutta, but it's obviously a very fundamental monastic practice, is giving up money. So this is something that really, really strengthens your ability to practice contentment and your ability to practice renunciation, because you're just not able to run after all the things that pop up in your mind, all the material things that you might crave or that you might want, or even you might think that you need. So whenever any thought pops up in your mind, you don't have the ability to actually get that item straight away. So there's always some kind of barrier. You have to wait for somebody to actually donate it, or maybe you have to ask somebody to donate it, so you feel a little bit hesitant to ask for too much. And in any case, there will be a time delay between the time that you want it and the time that you get it. So you can see that after all, maybe it wasn't that important after all. And very often when we actually want something, like an hour later, we already don't want it anymore. It was just something that popped into our mind. And at that moment, it seemed extremely important, but a little bit later, we already don't feel drawn to it anymore. So if you don't have money and you automatically have that barrier there, and you see that you don't need a lot of things. So what we see in the most basic way, renunciation does come with some rules. It does come with some discipline. And sometimes it can be quite hard to see how it is that keeping more rules actually leads to more freedom. It seems like it would lead to more restrictions. It would make you more unfree and make you more unhappy also, because you don't have the freedom to do whatever you want. But actually, this is the opposite. Arahants are the most free people in the world, and monastics are actually usually much more free, or they feel much more free than lay people. Because when you have less choice, then you have a lot more brain space for important things in your life. Like, for example, if you don't have to think what you're going to eat today, then you don't have to plan it all out. You don't have to cook. You don't have to plan the cooking. You don't have to plan the shopping. Or you don't have to think about what you're going to wear today. You don't have to think about, oh, is this looking good? Does this match? Is this still fashionable? You're just going to wear the same thing every day, and that makes your mind extremely peaceful. You really don't have to worry about those kind of things. You don't have to worry if you're having a bad hair day, or if you're going to dye your hair blue or green or yellow or whatever. It's just you don't have hair, so you really don't have to worry. So a lot of anxiety drops away from your mind, and your mind becomes much, much more clear. You have a lot less defilements because it's not constantly stirred up by all the things that lay people have to think about. And when your mind is much clearer and you have much less defilements, then you can keep your focus on the priorities in your life. You won't be distracted, so you will always remember what is the important thing in your life. So you can actually be focused on the priorities. You can give your time to what is important to you, and you're not going to forget. And it's also much, much easier to keep your mindfulness established when your mind is clear and when your mind is pure. And so the feeling of ease and well-being that is there when you practice some kind of renunciation is much stronger than what you can usually experience from material things. And so in the suttas, the Buddha used many similes for renunciation, and similes that he used very commonly are similes that have to do with birds, because birds, they are very free. They can just fly through the sky and they don't have any burdens. They don't have to carry any luggage. They're not attached to any specific place. Whenever they want to go, they just fly off, and it seems so easeful, and it seems such a light way of living. So bird similes are very common in the suttas to talk about monastic life and to talk about renunciation. And the most common one, I think the most well-known one, is found, for example, in a sutta called uh, the Chulahatipatupama Sutta, which is in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 27, if you want to look it up. And it goes as follows. Just as a bird, wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its only burden, so too a monastic is content with just the robes to protect their body and with alms food to maintain their stomach. And wherever they go, they set out taking only these with them. So, possessing thus this aggregate of noble virtue, they experience within themselves a bliss that is blameless. So, the Buddha is talking about monastic life here. He says, monks and nuns, we don't have many possessions. Wherever we go, we are completely unattached. We can go anywhere in the world. And the only material things that we have is that we need is the robes to cover our bodies and our alms bowl, so we can eat food to maintain our body. And when we travel or when we go to different places, we shouldn't take much more than this with us. Of course, you can have a toothbrush and a few small things, but generally, you should have a lifestyle that is very light and very easy to travel. And the Buddha explains that this kind of lifestyle leads to a bliss that is blameless. Um, and in this sutta, which I just mentioned, this is a sutta that explains the entire path of Buddhist practice, which we call the gradual training. So, of course, if you decide to practice Buddhism, you're not going to be an arahant straight away. It's a long path. It's a path that has many steps. And in this sutta, it explains even more rules than we have gone through today. But the rules are pretty similar to what we've discussed today. They're a little bit more detailed, but they're not substantially different from what we've seen today. And these rules are the first step. So in the sutta, there's a monastic that decide to go forth to become a monastic, and the first step is to go through all these rules. And even just only keeping those rules is what leads you to that bird-like lifestyle, to that bliss that is blameless. So even just only that much renunciation leads you to a lot of freedom, to a lot of joy. And this is just the beginning of the path. So the sutta goes through many more steps. The next step, for example, after this would be to practice sense restraint. So we have 6 senses: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, our body, and our mind. And we constantly get a lot of input from the outside, and we have to be very careful what kind of things, where we direct our attention, what kind of things we let into our mind. So we practice sense restraint. If there is a violent movie, we recognize this is not a skillful object, and so we turn our attention away. We practice restraint with the eyes. Or if we hear music that is very agitating, then we purposely, turn our attention elsewhere, or we hear people quarreling or something. So practicing sense restraint is the next step. And that leads to a deeper bliss that Buddha says that is a bliss that is unsullied. And then there are many more steps that follow after that. There's the next practice. So far, we haven't done any meditation yet. So far, we're still in the beginning stages of the path. The next next step is moderation in eating. The step after that is practicing wakefulness, not being lazy, not sleeping too much. The next step after that is being mindful and alert in all our daily activities. So far we haven't done any meditation yet, but we are already experiencing a lot of bliss. We are already practicing mindfulness and strengthening our good qualities of the mind and weakening the bad qualities in our mind. And at that point, we are actually prepared enough to now sit down and do some meditation. So at that point, the Buddha recommends that we sit down, that we deal with the defilements that are still left in our mind. So at that point, the defilements should have been a little bit weakened already through the other practices we have done. But of course, the 5 hindrances will still be there. So at that point, we are overcoming the 5 hindrances with meditation practices. And then we now at this point, we are able to enter the jhanas. And the jhana states are, of course, states of very, very deep bliss. So we see the path is a path of more and more joy. The deeper we go, the more we are able to renounce. And finally, after the jhanas, of course, we can experience the bliss of full enlightenment. So which is the deepest bliss and the deepest joy, where we completely overcome all suffering. So another bird simile that is in the suttas is found in a collection of texts called the Dhammapada. The Dhammapada is a collection of verses, inspirational verses. And this one is verse number 91. And it says, "The mindful ones exert themselves. They are not attached to any home. Like swans that abandon the lake, they leave home after home behind." So, of course, this is again a reference. In some way, this is a reference again to going forth. When we become monastics, what we say that we leave home life and we go forth into homelessness. So physically, we don't live anymore in lay houses. And of course, in the early times and even nowadays, many monastics didn't permanently live in a monastery. They were wandering monastics. They were traveling from place to place, and they would stay in places for a few days, a few weeks, a few months even, sometimes a few years, and then go to a new place, so they wouldn't be attached to any home. And they practice in such a way that they can be at home anywhere, that they can be at ease anywhere, because they have so much contentment that they don't need many comforts around them to be happy, because they have a lot of internal happiness that comes from the purity of their mind. But here in this verse, it doesn't only talk about an external house, an external home. When we think about homes, the thing that we actually value in having a home is to have a place where we can, retreat from all the busyness of the world, a place where we feel safe, maybe a place where we have loved ones, or a place where we are comfortable. So, of course, an external home can provide that safe space to us. But on the other hand, we're also creating mental homes in our mind. For example, we are trying to create spaces that feel safe, where we feel comfortable. So, for example, if our external environment is very unpleasant, uncomfortable, we will start daydreaming and thinking about, a different world where we feel more comfortable, feel more loved, where something good happens to us in our daydream. Or sometimes when we plan about the future, all this planning is also in order to create more safety, to know what's going to happen, so that we can be comfortable in the future, so that we know we're going to be safe, and where we try to control the future in order, like, again, we are building some kind of mental home there, some kind of space where we feel safe and comfortable. So when this verse says the monastics are like swans that abandon the lake. So like swans, they live in a lake, they're comfortable there, they find a lot of fish that they can eat, and everything is there that they need. But eventually they will just fly away. They're not attached to that lake. They just fly away into to some other place. In the same way as monastics, or generally as Buddhist practitioners, we leave home after home behind, or lake after lake behind. It doesn't only talk about material houses, it talks about all these mental plans, about all these safe spaces that we create in our mind. And that is also something that we should give up. And I feel like this idea of renouncing, or this idea of having less especially less material possessions, is also something that is gaining some kind of popularity, even in non-Buddhist circles nowadays. Like, for example, minimalism is becoming very popular on YouTube. There's so many, videos of people who even extreme minimalists who live without furniture, or people who live out of a backpack, and they count their possessions and they say, oh, I only have 100 possessions, or I only have 30 possessions, and they make entire videos about all the few things that they have and how they live out of a backpack and how they are digital nomads that can travel the world and live in all these beautiful tropical islands and so on. So even in non-Buddhist circles, there is a recognition that if you have less possessions, then you're very free and you're unattached, and that brings joy to those people. And that kind of lifestyle is something that they feel is very easeful and something that makes them very happy. So that recognition is there even in non-Buddhist circles. Because when you have less possessions, a lot of the worries of ordinary life fall away. Like, for example, if you don't have a house, you don't have to worry about a mortgage. If you don't have a lot of material needs, then you don't need a high-paying job. So you don't have to keep a job that you think is terrible just because you need the money. You don't have to worry about insurances because you don't have that many things, and they're not that valuable, and you're not that much attached. So if you lose one of them, you don't need insurance money. So you don't have to worry that much about all the external things. You don't need to protect stuff. You don't need to be possessive. And also you don't feel that inner urge to keep up with other people, to compare yourself all the time, and you don't feel like you're not good enough. So all these comparisons between you and others, all these worries about not being good enough, all this can fall away if you're good at letting go, if you're good at practicing renunciation. So there is a lot of ease and a lot of bliss that comes from this kind of lifestyle. And there's another verse in the Dhammapada, which I think is extremely beautiful, that I love very much. And that verse goes as follows. Happy indeed we live, we who possess nothing. Feed us on joy we shall be, like the radiant gods. So happy indeed we live, we who possess nothing. Of course, this is spoken to monastics. But it tells us, like, when you possess nothing, there's so much joy. You can feed on joy like the radiant gods. So in Buddhist cosmology, of course, we have a lot of different heavens, a lot of deva realms. And the higher up you go, the less material things are there. And in the higher realms, the devas don't even have a material body anymore. They have, in some realms, they have bodies that are made of love or made of bliss or made of joy. And even higher than that, they don't have any kind of bodies anymore. They just exist as a mental entity. So the less material stuff you have, the more you feel that kind of bliss. And there is actually another story of a monk in a book called the Theragatha, which is a collection of verses spoken by the monks. And that monk is a monk. He goes on alms round. He's trying to get food, but nobody is giving any food to him. So people ask him, well, now, since nobody's giving any food to you in this country, how are you going to survive? And the monk says, oh, I just think about my Dhamma practice, and I think about the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. And when I do that, I feel so much joy welling up in me that I feel like this joy is sustaining me. This joy is sustaining my practice, and this joy is even sustaining my body. So certainly there's some kind of nourishment from feeling that much bliss and that much joy. So with this Dhamma talk, I know that renunciation is a difficult topic for many people, for many lay people especially. So I know that many people feel like this is very austere, that's not something for you, or maybe not very practical. But what I'm actually hoping that at least to get across is that people understand that there is a lot of bliss there, that at least there is a lot of ease there, It's not just terrible. It's not just deprivation and scarcity, and it's not something that you should fear or that you should be afraid of. So I know that for many people, they don't feel really ready for monastic life, and I obviously don't want to force anyone or anything. But I just want to show a different angle and show that if there is a perception, or if there was a perception before, that monastic life is really unattractive and there's really a lot of deprivation there, that maybe you can open up a little bit and maybe you can see a different perspective. Because, in the long run, the Buddhist path is about letting go everything until the very end. Material things, mental attachments, even your sense of self, that's the last thing basically that you have to let go before you attain arahantship. So, it's good for Buddhists at least to be open-minded about renunciation, even if you're not in a space where you actually want to do that right now. Be open-minded about doing that maybe at some point in the future, maybe even in a future life. So it's very important to cultivate that understanding that renunciation is a positive thing, something desirable, even if you're not there yet. So to have some kind of appreciation for the joy that comes with renunciation, and maybe even to have the aspiration to be able to do that in the future. So I will end with one last bird simile. This one is from a collection called the Sutta Nipata, Sutta number 1.12. And this one goes as follows. Just as the blue-necked crested bird, so this is the peacock with the blue neck and the crest on the head, just as that peacock never reaches the speed of the wild goose, so too the householder cannot emulate a monastic, a silent sage that is meditating in the forest. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. A peacock is very, very beautiful, but it just cannot reach the speed of a wild goose. So the practice in a lay environment just cannot go as deep as monastic practice, and a practice where you don't have that much renunciation just cannot gain the speed, cannot gain the traction that it could gain if you were able to let go more. So in that way, that's why the stanza then says, householder cannot emulate a monastic, because monastics can practice in silence, they can practice in the forest, they don't have to stay in a house, they don't have to be surrounded by those material possessions, and they can really focus deeply on silence, on a meditation, and on the bliss that comes from that, the joy that comes from that. So at this point, I will finish my Dhamma talk for the day. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Also, if you want to share anything that came up during your meditation, then feel free. I'd be very interested to hear how you were feeling then. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of the things I briefly touched on, I think, in my talk about knowing your own priorities and not losing sight of your own priorities. So if there's a lot going on in your mind, then you might very easily be distracted. So obviously, I can't make a decision for you. Uh, it's really up to you, but it's very important that you get your priorities straight, so that in a few years or in a few decades you don't look back in your life and you think, oh, I wasted it, I should have done it differently, and if I had been mindful, I would have made a different choice. So whether lay life is right for you or monastic life is right for you, I really can't say, but it's really something that you should deeply think about, so that you don't have regret after the fact, when the opportunity has gone. So I think one of the deepest benefits of leading a life that is fairly quiet and fairly mindful is that you don't lose sight of what is important to you, and that you can actually devote your time in your life to whatever you choose, whatever is the right thing for you. Yes.
I have two questions. Thank you so much. First is the image and the analogy of the swans leaving the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Does that relate at all to the life cycle and rebirth?
Um, well, I think in this particular sutta, in this particular verse, the main idea really is that they are unattached, so that they can freely move around wherever they want to go. So I think in this particular case, it's probably not primarily about rebirth. But of course, rebirth again, when we come to the end of our life, we have to leave everything behind. So at that point, whether you practice letting go or not, you're forced to let everything go. And of course, that will go much more smoothly if you are able to let that go without too much mental anguish. So if you have practiced letting go in your life quite a lot, then the transition process from life to life will be a lot smoother and will be a lot more easeful, and with a lot less suffering and a lot less anguish and pain and so on. So in that way, I guess you could also say that, like swans can move from one lake to the other, you could more comfortably move from one life to the next one.
Thank you so much. And my second question is, in the beginning you talked about the antidote of generosity, giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give away, this is a little off, but when you have negative emotions, anger or jealousy or whatever, you kind of give it to somebody else. You express your anger, you express your jealousy.
Mm.
Then what? Is that the right thing to do? Then the responsibility is on the other person to pick it up or not?
Well, basically, when you're angry and you just project that on another person, either the other person is very mindful and doesn't accept your anger, so they remain quiet or peaceful, or maybe they even can, if they're very skillful, they can generate metta towards you. But you're not actually transferring your own anger. You yourself still will probably remain angry. It's just that if the other person isn't skillful, then both of you are angry. So usually, if you're angry with another person because the other person has done something and you start shouting at them and they shout back, then what you have done is just created more anger. You haven't gotten rid of your own anger usually. So yeah, I don't think that's a good way of dealing with anger. It doesn't help. It just makes your own defilement stronger and the other person's defilements also stronger. So the best way to deal with anger is to practice a lot of metta meditation. If you feel very angry, it's often best not to talk to another person until you've calmed down a little bit. So if you're mindful enough to see that there's anger in you, then just retreat to a quiet space and spend some time with yourself. And if you are a person that is very prone to anger, then just preemptively doing a lot of metta practice helps a lot. And especially also do self metta practice, direct metta at yourself, so that you yourself feel more comfortable in your skin. And if you internally feel more comfortable, more at ease, then anger doesn't arise that easily. Anger arises more easily if you generally feel more uncomfortable, if if you maybe feel a little let's say maybe you feel in some way inferior or to other people, or you doubt yourself a lot or something. In that scenario, it's much easier for anger to arise because you already feel quite uncomfortable as a kind of a baseline feeling in your life. So doing a lot of metta practice really helps for that, especially self-metta practices. Mm. Yes?
Hi, thank you for your words. I remember discussing with you about removing your hair and shaving your head,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that would probably be something that I could do because during the pandemic, I was about to.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a buzzer in my hand, and I said, okay, I could do this, but my husband refused to let me. So I think it is very liberating to cut one's hair off
Mm.
because it's, women are told it's their beauty and that, and to just like cut it off and still, it's very liberating. So I could appreciate that part
Mm.
of it, but there's a lot more that I probably couldn't.
Mm.
So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very easy. Like if you like, I like it. It's perfect. You don't have to wash your hair. You don't have to style your hair. You don't have to go to the hairdresser and spend a lot of money. You don't have bad hair days. So yeah, I think it's perfect. I don't understand why people want to have hair, but apparently most people want to. Yes.
I have a question. You mentioned bed bugs
Mm-hmm.
not killing, which I think I know the answer, but I wanted to hear the Buddhist perspective. So we have this problem right now with lantern flies, and they're parasitic. They destroy trees, and trees provide homes for animals, and we're supposed to kill them.
Mm.
Um, so with things of that nature, what do we do? And I think again, I think the answer is we don't kill it, and these things play out. But what is from the Buddhist perspective? What is the rationale?
Yeah. So I don't have personal experience with lantern bugs. For some other bugs that you can have in a house, such as termites or bed bugs or so, and so on, sometimes there are natural remedies that will drive them away. So for lantern bugs, I have no idea. But if you can avoid to kill them, if you can find another way of driving them away, then that is very much preferable. Um, in some situations, it's necessary to make a choice. So the Buddha talked about different kinds of making karma. So there's black karma that is exclusively bad. There's white karma that is exclusively good, and there is karma that is both black and white, so mixed karma. So if you have so sometimes there isn't one way that is obviously the best way of handling things. So for example, if this destroys the habitat of other animals and will cause a lot of damage to different things, or even kill people or kill other animals, sometimes you might have to take sometimes you have to choose between two bad things, and you just have to choose the one that is a little less bad than the other, and understand that it's not the best way of handling things. But yeah, especially in lay life, there are many choices that people have to make that are not exclusively good karma. Um, so, which is why the recommendation is there to become a monastic and eventually get enlightened, so you don't have to make these kind of decisions anymore. But as long as you're stuck in samsara, many things will happen that are not exclusively good, and you will be forced to make decisions that you will be put into situations where there's no way out that is exclusively good. That will happen quite frequently. That is something you have to expect as long as you are stuck in samsara. Yeah.
It's the same with renunciation as well, right? If you try to renounce and you're in samsara,
Yeah,
it sometimes pulls you back. You want to go ahead, it pulls you back.
it does pull you back. And I mean, there are many people who renounce for a while and then they see they can't actually keep it up and then they go back to lay life. So that definitely does happen. So, and even in monastic life, there are situations where you have no perfect solution, where you have to make a choice between two bad options. You just do the best you can. That's all you can do. Yes, back in the back.
All the way to the back, and I'll try to project.
Mm-hmm.
If you can hear me.
Yes.
Great. I have a feeling Monty has answered for this already. But when you're describing the monastic life, there's a lot of excitement on my end, but also a lot of fear. Are there ways to kind of experience that without taking the plunge of monastic life? Is there like a way to ease into it?
Yeah, usually what we recommend to do first is for people to just, come to a monastery, spend some time here, maybe spend a week or 2 weeks, just see how you feel generally with that kind of lifestyle. And then you can go to different monasteries, and because monasteries are different, not every monastery is the same. So you go to different monasteries, experience the different atmosphere, the different way of doing things. If you find a monastery that is suitable for you, where you feel comfortable, where you would feel that you have the inspiration and also the trust in the senior monastics to guide you skillfully, then you could ask them if you could stay for an extended period of time, a few months maybe. Just see how you feel. And if you still think that that's a good way of doing things, then usually the first step is to make a commitment to become a long-term layperson. In some places, that is called an anagarika, so like a postulant. So that is a stage of preparation for the ordination. That's not a proper ordination yet, but you'd be wearing either white clothes or white robes. In some places, you would already shave your head, but in other places, you wouldn't. And you would keep 8 precepts and just live with the monastics for at least 1 year, usually. And just see how that lifestyle feels for you. And after that, if you still want to go ahead and the community thinks that you're a good candidate, then usually they would give you a novice ordination. So you take on a little more rules, but you're still not a full member of the community. And so you practice in that way, let's say for a year or 2 or 3, depending on the place, depending on the community, also depending on if you feel ready or not to take the next step. And if still you feel that after a few years you're still confident and the community is still confident, then at that point you would take full ordination. So it's usually a process that takes many years, and at any point in the process, people can say, okay, I want to go back to lay life, or I want to just stay on that stage and not go deeper. So usually, yeah, it's a process that takes many years, and it's also a process where many people just go to a certain extent and then decided that they will not take full ordination. That's actually quite common. So there's a lot of options to explore, and most monasteries will let lay people come and stay for a while.
Just do it.
Just try it out. Go for a week. There's not much risk. Just go for a week and see how you like it, and if you like it, then just stay on. Yes.
I'm curious how you deal with food allergies.
Well, usually if it's a medical condition, then we would try to make arrangements for that. So we let lay people know. Mostly the lay people are very supportive of that. Also, if there's a range of different things, then the person who has an allergy doesn't take from that dish that gives them the allergy. So there's a general encouragement to, in most monasteries, people encourage the lay people monastics encourage the lay people when they bring food, not to bring one big pot where everything is, mixed together, but to bring a few separate dishes so that people who have allergies can actually pick what is helpful for them. Any more questions? Okay, then I think we can end for today. We will end with 3 sadhus. Feel free to join me if you like. Sadhu, sadhu.